Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the So Happy Together podcast. I can't believe we've already gotten this far. For those who haven't listened to the podcast before, I want to thank you for hitting play and joining me today. I'm going to briefly go over what we talked about in our prior episode, episode 3, which during that episode, we talked about why you date the way you do and where attachment styles come from. Today, we're going to be talking about the next step, which is how to begin moving toward earn secure attachment. To start off, I want to go over what attachment is for anyone who may just be joining the show. The definition of attachment is the emotional bond that emerges during the first year of life in interactional situations between an infant and one or a few significant adult caregivers. Primarily, it's usually the mother that's associated as the caregiver, but not always the case. Depending on the child's upbringing and adult figures, the main caregiver source is different. The emotional bond between the caregiver and the child should result in a feeling of security or trust that the child develops in themselves. So, their attachment style. And there are 4 different types of attachment styles. There's secure, anxious, disorganized, and avoidant. Anxious attachment style, there's a significant fear of abandonment. There's hyper-awareness of relational cues, so overthinking situations. And there's a desire for reassurance and closeness. Those are the main features of anxious attachment style. Whenever we talk about avoidant, there's more discomfort with emotional dependence. So your partner being emotionally dependent upon you or even any other relational source. There's suppression of vulnerability. There's prioritizing independence over connection. So really that closeness, that emotional closeness is threatening to the avoidant attachment styles. Then there's disorganized, which is a lovely combo of the anxious and avoidant attachment styles. So there's desire for closeness, but fear of it. And there's a push and pull dynamic. So wanting that closeness, but pulling away when it becomes available. And it's often linked to inconsistent or unsafe early environments. So sometimes love was available, sometimes it wasn't. It was inconsistent. Now, secure attachment differs from other attachment styles because connection feels safe rather than threatening. People with secure attachment can balance closeness and independence. They can regulate emotions more easily and communicate needs without excessive fear of abandonment or rejection. People that are within the secure attachment category are comfortable with emotional intimacy. When emotional intimacy shows itself, they don't get anxious. Their nervous system doesn't get activated. Doesn't mean they don't have feelings about it, but they're able to calm themselves in that situation. They also have the ability to communicate needs clearly without fear of what could happen afterwards. They're able to regulate their emotions during conflict, and they trust their partner without constant reassurance. They'll stay independent while staying connected, and they are open to repair and resolving conflict in relationships. Conflict does occur. It can be scary when it happens, but being able to repair it is part of the relational processes. And I'm not here to say that everything in a relationship can be repaired. There are situations where things get to a point where it is unhealthy for both individuals, but it is not uncommon for there to be repairs in relationships. That's where in episode 3, I talked about that rupture and repair. That can actually make a relationship stronger depending on what the rupture is. Those moments, you are in vulnerable situations usually. So being open to repairing conflict between your partner can make it so that there's more trust between you two. I feel like whenever we think of relational processes, we're maybe also limiting it to romantic relationships, but this rupture and repair happens in family relationships, friendships. For instance, I have a best friend who I love dearly. She has always been a great means of support. I've known her since I was 4 years old. She was 3. We actually grew up next door to each other. And if there were never any kind of conflicts in our relationship, I don't think it would be as strong as it is. Not that we have a ton of conflicts, but there have been points where maybe she's been agitated, I've been agitated, and we've had to say things to make our friendship better. That is just part of what makes relationships so vulnerable and so beautiful, is whenever you can work with somebody to repair the conflict. You can work with somebody and say, I want to make things better for both of us. And I'm willing to make things better for both of us because I care about you enough. Now, the difference between making these repairs successful is having two individuals willing to participate in the rupture and repair process. And that's where attachment styles can get a bit tricky, especially if you're not aware of what you're doing. And although it may be unintentional, it's something that if you don't have the knowledge of what you're doing and you're continuing to engage in relational processes that are making it so you can't have healthy relationships, then there needs to be some insight. There needs to be some change. And there needs to be a point where you can sit in the discomfort. Life will come at you. There will be situations that are going to be uncomfortable, and you can't always avoid it. You can't always just try to make everything fine. And no one is being singled out for having these crappy experiences or experiencing the discomfort in relationships. At some point in life, everybody is going to experience some kind of discomfort with somebody. You wouldn't be listening if you hadn't. I want to talk now about what attachment styles look like statistically in the world. So it is estimated that around 50 to 65% of the world's population has secure attachment style. That is a hard statistic to really have a finalized number on, but we usually say around 50%, while the other 50% of the world is categorized into insecure attachment categories. So that's going to be around 20 to 25% having avoidant attachment style, the 10 to 20% having anxious attachment style, and then 5% of the population having that disorganized attachment style, so the anxious avoidant. It is easier to recognize our attachment style once we learn about it, but the bigger question becomes for many people, if my nervous system learned these patterns early in life, can I actually change them? And I want to tell you, you can. You do have the ability to change your attachment style. This is a process that psychologists call earned secure attachment, which is the process we're talking about today. Secure attachment isn't either something you have or don't have. It is something that can be developed through awareness, experience, and intentional relational work. Intentional relational work is the conscious effort people make to build, maintain, and improve the quality of their relationships. So like I said earlier, wanting to change things with somebody else, you're wanting to make things better. That is where the intentional piece comes in. And you have to be intentional. If you're not, none of this will work. By being intentional, you are no longer letting relationship patterns run on autopilot. And it means you are actively paying attention to how you show up for somebody else, how you communicate with them, and how you respond in connection with others. To put it simply, you're doing the inner and interpersonal work that is necessary for healthy relationships. And you may be asking why awareness is the first step toward change, but not the only step. Knowing your attachment style can offer insight, but insight alone rarely changes deeply wired relational patterns. Attachment styles are nervous system adaptations formed through repeated relational experiences. Our attachment lives in the nervous system, not just the mind. And again, the patterns developed through our early emotional experiences become automatic survival strategies in relationships. So you're basically undoing 20, 30, 40 years of learned behavior. It's not something that's easy. It's not something that everybody wants to do. But I know you're here and you're listening for a reason because you want some form of change. Recognizing your attachment style is a great step toward making effective change. Some examples of understanding your attachment style might be, you have anxious attachment. You may realize that I understand that I have fear of abandonment, but I still get activated when my partner pulls away. Someone with avoidant attachment, they might recognize they withdraw when intimacy increases, but their body may still default to distancing when vulnerability arises. So you have that recognition, but you still need to make the change for your nervous system activation. You are going to have to retrain your body to respond differently. To understand how to start to retrain your body, there does need to be the understanding that attachment patterns operate automatically. So this means that attachment reactions often happen before conscious thought and show up as thoughts, emotions, body responses, and of course, behaviors in relationships. Changing these patterns requires things like tolerating emotional discomfort, communicating needs directly, regulating anxiety or shutdown responses. Shutdown responses are learned when emotional conflict arises. When somebody shuts down, they are disengaging from the conflict, allowing the individual to attempt to regulate. But that only allows for short-term relief for that individual. Changing how you're responding also requires staying present during relational conflict. And these are skills that you obtain. They're not just realizations. Accountability is also another learned skill. Accountability means taking responsibility for your behaviors and reactions in these relationships. You're creating recognition, but also being gentle with yourself, not providing judgment, but acknowledgement of where you're at, what you're doing, and how you want to make change. Having self-compassion for yourself is so important. Self-compassion begins by being honest with ourselves about the pain we've experienced or are experiencing, but not dwelling or wallowing on it. If we dwell or wallow on it, that is how we get stuck in our feedback loop. And our goal here is to break it. We want to break that loop. We don't want to be stuck in our thoughts. We want to make a change. I want you to imagine if you were responding to a friend who was in pain, how you would treat them. Most of us would say we would treat our friends with kindness. We would show them understanding. Whenever it comes to ourselves, we can be very harsh critics, and we can lack that self-compassion. I should have done better. I should have done this differently. If I only hadn't had done this. That is the feedback loop that we get stuck in. And that does not help with effective change. Using kind, encouraging, and supportive words has a far different effect on the mind than using harsh, sarcastic, or uncaring words towards ourselves. And here's another thing. Self-pity never helps. It only makes things worse. There have been points in my life where I have engaged in self-pity. Everything was awful. Everything stunk. Nothing was going to get better. Nothing was going to change. That's what I was telling myself, at least. My change in my mindset didn't happen until I started using kindness and self-compassion towards myself, and also telling myself that change can happen and I have to be the one to make it happen. Our attachment wounds formed in relationships, so it would make sense that healing actually happens whenever we create new relational experiences. These new relational experiences can occur through healthy friendships, secure romantic relationships, family relationships, even in an office setting, having a more secure relationship with your coworkers. We create this security by being able to set boundaries and identify when a relationship may not be healthy. When you begin to engage in secure practices, your brain will prefer to engage in behaviors that are familiar versus healthy. So your brain will start trying to revert back to your own learned behavior. Again, someone can understand they repeatedly date emotionally unavailable partners, but their nervous system still might interpret that dynamic as normal or even attractive. Breaking this cycle requires intentional relational choices and the ability to sit through the discomfort of something new, a new behavior. In episode 3, we talked about triggers. I want to go ahead and review that because our triggers are actually very key pieces of information we need to change our nervous system response. Triggers are moments that activate your nervous system's old emotional patterns. They are cues. They can be small. They can be big too. They're signals that tell your brain that your connection may be threatened, even if there is no threat in the situation. A trigger is a reminder of a past emotional experience, and your mind and body are reacting as if that past situation might be happening again. My example of triggers in the last episode were songs, and they were songs that brought me back to parts of my life that were sources of large emotional distress, which made it difficult to listen to them. I would have these songs that were associated with people, places, events, and it made it so hard to enjoy songs that I had previously enjoyed. It made it hard to not get activated. I could be sitting in a car, and if one of those songs came on, my nervous system would become activated and it would cause distress for me. Our triggers happen in real time and typically will show up during moments of conflict, distance, intimacy, or uncertainty. Or, like I mentioned, listening to music in the car for myself. The reactions from our triggers, specifically in relationships, can show up as protest behavior, which is engaging in behavior that might make the individual feel like closeness will be restored. And this is not manipulation, but that individual's way to try and regulate their nervous system and stop the discomfort. Another reaction that can show up is emotional shutdown. And that's when someone disconnects from their emotions, thoughts, or relational engagement in order to reduce feelings of overwhelm or distress. Again, a nervous system regulation strategy. The other behavior that can show up is people-pleasing. People-pleasing is a relational coping pattern where someone prioritizes other people's needs, approval, or comfort over their own in order to maintain a connection, avoid conflict, or feel accepted. It's a safety strategy. If I keep everyone happy, I'll be loved, accepted, or safe, which is a big fat lie because you can't keep everybody happy. It's not how the world works. The other behavior I want to talk about is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is when the nervous system is constantly scanning for potential threat, rejection, or danger. The individual feeling like they can create safety from threat by staying hyper-aware puts their nervous system in a state that is constantly activated and open to interpret situations as unsafe when they're not unsafe. When we can identify these responses and our triggers in real time, that is when we can start to choose a different response. And this healing requires us walking that really hard path, practicing these new behaviors again and again, building new experiences of safety, and continuing to create awareness as a starting point, not the transformation itself. Some ways that you can begin to identify your triggers are by asking yourself some questions. So, when moments of discomfort or unease show up in relationships, romantic or non romantic, and you're starting to feel panicked or distressed, ask yourself what thoughts are showing up, what emotions are showing up, what feelings do I have in my body. When you are in these moments of distress, it is also important to remind yourself that your nervous system is trying to protect connection and create distance from what is triggering you. I've mentioned before in one of my episodes that I'm currently working on my clinical hours for my social work route, and I do have a clinical supervisor that's really great. He is 81. He's goofy. He has a lot of insight and experience in this field, but he does talk about how you do have to calm the body before you do calm the mind. And navigating these physical responses while also trying to stay logical is incredibly hard. But if you can calm down your body first, then you can begin to calm your mind. There are different therapeutic interventions whenever you are trying to teach somebody to calm down their nervous system. These therapeutic interventions are different methods that bring the individual back to the present moment and out of the automatic attachment responses. One of my favorite interventions to use, even on myself, is naming the experience. If you can label the experience you're having, it makes it more approachable. It makes it less ambiguous. So saying things like, I notice I'm feeling anxious. I notice I'm feeling I want to pull away. Saying something like my attachment system is activated. I'm having the thought that something bad is going to happen. And the reason I'm saying the thought or the feeling is that that is all your reaction is, our thoughts and feelings. I feel like there's this thought that if we say what we're thinking and it's a negative thought process, that us saying it aloud will bring it to fruition, or even saying it in our mind, acknowledging it. But whenever you're labeling emotions, that helps the brain move from emotional reactivity to a conscious awareness. Saying or not saying what you're feeling will not change the trajectory of the situation. Now, that's acknowledging it to yourself. If you say something to your partner, your friend, your coworker, whatever, that could change the trajectory. So acknowledge it to yourself. You don't have to acknowledge it to others necessarily. The next intervention I want to mention that can be useful when calming your nervous system down is a method that involves doing body scans. Body scans involve scanning the body or parts of it and tuning into the sensations that you're feeling. It's very common to do this during meditative practices. I've done this at the end of yoga before, and it is very calming. Whenever you're doing a body scan, you can start from your head and go down to your toes, maybe taking about 10 to 15 seconds to really feel the sensations going on in each part of your body. Body scans have been shown to lower symptoms of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain by increasing awareness and acceptance of bodily sensations. It's a really great thing to use when your body is also in a calm and low stress environment. You can use this on a daily basis and it'll help you become more in tune with your body. While you engage in this practice, you can let your mind chatter away in the background, but don't try to ignore it or silence it. You want to observe your sensations like you're a curious child. Don't judge your feelings, don't judge your sensations. Just look at things objectively. Whether the sensations are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, allow them to exist. Another widely well-known and commonly used intervention or practice in therapeutic settings for grounding is called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Has a super catchy name, but a fairly effective method to use whenever you're more activated. Using this method allows you to bring yourself back to the present moment by using your 5 sensations and redirecting yourself from the thoughts and feelings that are going on. How you engage in this practice is by first looking around and identifying 5 objects in your immediate environment. This means focusing on details like color, shape, and texture, looking at a plant, looking at a coffee mug, maybe a picture, but something that you can see. What you'll do next is you will touch 4 things. This could be fabrics of your clothes, the chair you're sitting in, or the texture of an object in your hand. After identifying 4 things that you can feel, you'll then identify 3 things that you can hear. So you're going to listen for 3 distinct sounds around you. This could be a ticking clock, distant traffic, the wind blowing, a dog barking, the birds chirping, even the air conditioner running. After you've identified 3 things you can hear, you'll then identify 2 scents in your environment. Maybe you have coffee, maybe there's soap nearby, maybe there are flowers, maybe there's a candle. The last step is to focus on 1 thing you can taste. Sometimes having gum readily available can help. I even recommend sour candy. I like to keep warheads in my desk drawer at work because sometimes things can get a little bit chaotic, but we work through it. Once you've gone through your 5 senses, that is how you complete this technique. And it is very discreet. You don't have to make it obvious that you're trying to use a grounding technique. The last and very discreet method that can help regulate your nervous system activation is called the cold water reset. Temperature changes have been proven to quickly calm the nervous system. Using the cold water reset is really simple, and usually items needed are readily available. Whenever you identify that you are becoming triggered, you can splash cold water on your face, hold an ice cube to your chest, or wash hands in cold water. Now, the water does need to be cold, not tepid. This method is used to stimulate your vagus nerve, which helps regulate stress responses. These are 4 strategies that can be used when your nervous system is activated. One important thing to remember with these strategies is that regulation always comes before reflection. When your nervous system is activated, your brain is focused on survival, not on insight. So before you try to analyze the situation or solve the conflict, the first step is helping your body feel safe again. Once your body begins to calm down, your thinking brain can come back online. That's when you can start asking yourself more reflective questions like, what was actually happening in this moment? What story did my mind begin to tell? Was this situation actually unsafe, or did it just feel familiar? Pausing in the moment whenever you are triggered is where change begins. You're disrupting that loop I've talked so many times about now, and you're taking a moment to calm yourself and not be reactive. And this will come with practice. There doesn't need to be perfection. You're not going to get it right every single time. but this will create a little more space between what you feel and what you do next. And over time, those small pauses begin to reshape the way your nervous system experiences connection with others. Healing from these triggers and redirecting your attachment takes time and kindness toward yourself. Your brain will slowly learn that connection does not always lead to pain. If this process also feels slow, frustrating, or even exhausting at times, that is completely normal. You're not just changing thoughts, you're rewiring patterns your nervous system may have practiced for years or even decades. It's going to take time to undo. But every moment of awareness you bring, every time you pause, every time you choose a healthier response, you are building something new. If you take one thing away from today's episode, I hope that is a new kindness and understanding for yourself, and that your attachment style is not your identity. It is simple the way your nervous system is, that it is adaptable, which means that through awareness, new experiences, and intentional relational work, earned secure attachment is absolutely possible. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up today. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and on Spotify at the So Happy Together podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please like or share with your friends. And also, please follow the show on Spotify so you never miss an episode. I'll talk to you all soon.